Welcome back to Hardball. General Petraeus is expected to deliver his report on the surge in Iraq next week. But will it be an honest look at Iraq, or will it be the latest example of misrepresentation and cherry-picking the numbers to support the Bush administration argument that security is actually improving? That's our Hardball debate tonight. Pete Hegseth is an Iraq war veteran and executive director of Vets for Freedom. And Brian Katulis is a senior fellow at the Center for American Progress. Well, Pete, you start. What do you think we're going to get from General Petraeus as it gets, let's put it this way, polished by the White House speechwriters?
Well, I don't think General Petraeus is going to let the White House speechwriters write his report. He's going to come back or write his assessment. It's not a report. He's coming back to provide an assessment about progress on the ground. He's the most informed person we've got over there. He's got a new strategy that he's been implementing. He understands what's working. He understands that military progress is a prerequisite
and he has the
for political
freedom,
progress.
You believe he has the freedom as a serving general officer, field officer, to say it's not working?
He has a duty.
Does he have the freedom to tell the truth?
He has a duty as a general officer, and he's served the country well to tell the truth, and I believe he will.
Even if his commander-in-chief doesn't like it?
Absolutely. I mean, we've got a history in this country of
Brian, your view of what's coming next week. Are we going to get a clean report, or are we going to get a doctored report?
We know what he's going to say. They're cherry-picking the facts already. They're defining special categories on what is ethno-sectarian violence and constructing these categories that don't make any sense at all. The levels of violence are deadly and high. The NIE told us that. And it's a mess. Okay. And he's saying it's down 75%, and they're ignoring whole swaths of the country, picking and choosing, cherry-picking the facts like they did on the NIE.
Let me go back to the original reason for this surge. The war was losing popularity, as you all know, a year ago. Deadly down in popularity. And the president said, let's give it one college try. Let's see if we can protect Baghdad and allow the politicians to cut deals and bring together some unity in that country so we can leave. So let's give them really good security. Let's throw in 30,000 more troops into Baghdad, clean it up so the politicians can cut a deal and we can get out of there. Has that been done? Is Baghdad secure now for the politicians to get their work done, and are they getting it?
It's more secure, absolutely, and they focused on the beltways around Baghdad first, cut off the entry routes of Al-Qaeda and their suicide bombers and their car bombs.
Is the goal of creating a secure political environment for Baghdad working?
Absolutely. From the ground up, you're seeing tribal leaders come together and provide security for their neighborhoods in Baghdad. And you know, everybody wants to discount Anbar province. And
I just want to focus on what the president focused on when he started.
Sure.
Which is Baghdad political unity.
Sure. Chris, we know it's not happening. I mean, this government is falling apart. Half of the ministers in the Maliki government aren't even there. They withdrawn. And in Baghdad, in the areas that there's increased stability, why? Because there's been sectarian cleansing. The NIE told us that. Populations have been displaced. Nearly half of the people who've been displaced in Iraq happened since this surge. The numbers of people who've been pushed out of their homes doubled since the surge started. And that's a fundamental problem. We're talking about certain neighborhoods, we're crawling up a tree, but we're not looking at the forest. And the forest's on fire, and there's earthquakes, and it's a mess in Iraq. And we're saying, okay, it's getting a little better in certain neighborhoods, but we're not talking about why. And it's because of sectarian cleansing in Baghdad. It's because we're making these alliances with tribal forces that frankly don't want us there in the end. They want us to get out in about 5 or 6 months. When you ask them, they hate the Persians first, which they talk about the Maliki government. They hate the U.S., and they don't like Israel, by the way, too.
Well, that's not surprising. Let me ask you about their situation in 1952 in Korea and 1968 in Vietnam. In neither case was the United States losing on the battlefield. We were moving up to the 38th parallel in Korea. We were moving back toward pushing the Chinese back, regaining territory. In Vietnam, a lot of argument about what Tet meant, but a lot of people would argue we never lost a battle in Vietnam. So it's not about winning or losing the battle, but are we not somewhere in that twilight zone right now over there, not winning and not losing? Are you contending that we're winning, Pete?
I'm contending that we're winning.
No, are we winning?
Absolutely. We are heading in the right direction. We are.
Okay, how many years will it take us to win? No, but I can ask you, if we're in a war going into the 6th year, I can ask you, if we are winning, how many more years will it take us to get it done? How many roughly? 15? 10?
You can't. I don't think you can. I think we will all want to talk in a few years and not in decades, certainly.
A few years.
Nobody wants
You think we could possibly
guys out as soon as
possible? Can we get out of there with victory in 3 or 4 years? I need to know this.
Chris, history is not going to judge us on when we leave. It's going to judge us on what we leave
We're
behind.
having an election next year,
what we're going to leave
the American people want to know what the outlook is.
What's the outlook?
What's the outlook going to be next year at election time?
The outlook is going to be largely very positive if we continue the strategy we've got.
You argue if we keep the troop strength we have right now, by next year, we're arguing here at this table a year from now, it'll look better.
You cannot.
You're saying say it's going to look better.
It's going to look better, and you can't discount the military progress and what that does in a counterinsurgency. You have to shift the sympathies of a population in a counterinsurgency, and the only way to do that is to provide security, and that's exactly.
He says that the Trace report will say that we're providing security. Are we?
Look, at the end of the day, Iraq's in a civil war. They're in a vicious struggle for power. This is not a counterinsurgency. A counterinsurgency, you need an ally that is aligned with us. And some of these Shiite militias that have infiltrated the Iraqi police and the Iraqi army, they're planting IEDs on our soldiers. You read the 7 soldiers, the enlisted soldiers in the New York Times.
Let me ask you about,
it's a mess.
How can we tell? Forget the bulletins coming out of the White House, the communiques, the papers they give to the press. I want to ask you, Pete, how can we as American voters and journalists tell who's telling the truth here?
Walk the streets of Baghdad, walk the streets of Anbar, like members of Congress have done, and they've come back and said,
with the Blackhawks overhead.
Potemkin villages. We're paying people $2,500 to say, open up your shop for an hour or two so we can walk a congressman through here. It's ridiculous.
In these neighborhoods, and
the security has come from sectarian content at the end of the day.
I saw it with my own eyes.
You know what the problem with your proposal? It's very hard for someone like me to get into Iraq. Maybe Katie Couric got over there, and I salute her for getting in there and reporting.
But it's
very hard. Well. It's very hard to get in there. It's very hard to get the kind of military report, or even the best odds you have walking the streets and coming back alive. That's the tricky part.
And the best person to give an assessment is a general who walks the streets and understands.
I have been living my life with generals who say, yes, sir, we can do what you ask us to do, because that's what they're trained to do, obey orders. And it seems to me they're supposed to say we're winning.
That's not what
Chris,
I never heard of a general saying we're losing and keeping his stripes.
And I think the American people get it. The American people get it. Enough's enough. We've done our share.
Well, we'll see. You know, you both make good arguments. We will see next week. I'm afraid it's going to be murky, and this argument's going to continue. Anyway, Pete Hegseth and Brian Katulis. Up next, you never thought your name